Well, we're here at the Anchorage Railroad Train Depot in Anchorage in commemoration for Rendezvous and a special great train show that's going on here with a lot of model trains that include Alaska cars like the ones you see over to the right here. And they've been set up with fantastic layouts that try to replicate the scenery of Alaska. This particular exhibit, though, has to do with a special engine that is known by 557, right?
557, yes.
Okay, and we have here one of the exhibitors helping to explain a little bit about it. And just a few questions. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of 557?
Sure. It's one of 2,200 identical locomotives that were built during World War II for the U.S. military, and they were built small to be able to serve overseas. They were sent to Europe and Asia. So they were built narrow and low so they'd fit European tunnels and under European bridges. Towards the end of the war, the U.S. Army Transportation Corps brought 10 or 12 of them to Alaska, and they became Alaska Railroad locomotives, I guess, after the war. The Alaska Railroad operated some of them into the early 60s. One of the big advantages they had over the diesel electrics is you could run flooded tracks in a steam locomotive, whereas the diesel electric, you couldn't because the electric motors would die in the water. So Alaska Railroad ran this particular one into the 60s, and it was sold for scrap to a gentleman in eastern Washington who didn't scrap it out. He moved it to his little private museum and ran it back and forth for a number of years. Ultimately, it came back to Alaska, it must be 15 years or so ago, and there was a special arrangement made with the nonprofit 557 Restoration Company and the Alaska Railroad to restore it to operating condition. I've been working on it for 10 years. Other people have been working on it for several years longer. We're hoping it's been a pretty extensive restoration, though an initial inspection told us that it was like nearly ready to run. It wasn't. It had to be pretty much gutted. This steam boiler completely dismantled, rebuilt, and a whole lot of other stuff. So, where else are we going with that?
So I guess you were saying that it started out as a 3-year project and it's turned into what, a 13-year?
Yeah, I like to tell people we're 12 years into a 3-year project, and we should be done in a couple more years.
Okay, and you're hoping that maybe this summer you might be able to get the boiler working, is that right?
We're anticipating firing up the boiler this spring. There's still a bunch of other assembly that has to be done before we can run it, but maybe as early as next fall we might be able to move it under its own power, but it'll probably still be a couple more years before it actually goes out of the tracks any distance. And the plan is to run excursion trains with it eventually on the Alaska Railroad tracks, probably in the spring and fall when the Alaska Railroad isn't running so many trains themselves.
So are there any other engines like this in existence today?
There were 2,200 of them built. Some of them, the Polish Railroad ran these things until very recently, and they actually developed some of the improved technology that we've incorporated in this one to make them more durable and last longer. I was in England a few years ago, and there are at least 2 and maybe 3 or more historic railroads there that have at least one of these operating. I saw one of them in their shop, but they weren't running it the day I was there. But it was all restored in the gray army livery, whereas ours will be in the black paint that it wore when it worked for the Alaska Railroad.
So here in Alaska, are there any others?
Pardon me?
Are there any other of these engines in the state of Alaska that remain from that original dozen or so?
Well, there's the one in the park blocks, which is pretty much just an empty shell, but this is the only one that I know of that's being restored for operating. Most of them were sold for scrap and were scrapped.
So the one in the park strip here in Anchorage, has it somehow contributed to this particular project?
I'm not at liberty to say, but it might have.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, certainly do have an inspiration for the effort. How many people have been involved in this attempt to restore this engine?
Dozens. I really don't have any idea. We work 4 days a week, and some people work more than one day. I typically work 1 day a week. So I don't even know all the people who are working the days that I'm not there. It's a pretty big crew.
And were you saying that the public is invited to stop by and watch the work in progress?
Absolutely. If you see cars sitting in front of the shop in Wasilla, stop by, and you can probably talk somebody into giving you a tour.
Okay, and you can actually see the building where it's housed right now if you're driving on the Parks Highway towards
Yeah.
Fairbanks?
It's across the Parks Highway from Fred Meyer's in Wasilla.
Oh, great. Okay.
It's
Well,
not
thanks.
right on the parks. It's back
Okay.
at the block or two, but you can see it.
All right. Well, good luck with the continued project, and thanks for your time here.
Thank you.
And sharing your
Nice
mind.
chatting with you.
Could you, before I cut this off, could you tell us your name and maybe a little bit about your railroad background?
I'm Ken. I really have no railroad background. I'm an old car guy. To me, the best thing about working on this project is I don't have to buy the parts.
Oh, okay. What's your last name, Ken?
It's Morton.
Ken Morton. Well,
Yeah.
certainly thank you for your time, and good luck with the continued efforts with the project.
Thank you.